Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to listen. This is our update here for Wednesday. A lot going on. A lot of rhetoric being thrown around, and it appears that we may be going to war in the very near future with North Korea. And we got Larry with us. Thanks, Larry, for coming on board.
Sure, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Stuart.
What's your take on all this rhetoric on North Korea? This sounds a lot more serious than I think ever before. What's your take on that?
Well, the Drudge headlines, and I'll read them off real quick today. Kim aims for ICBM capable of strike of USA. North Korea claims major breakthrough with first test. New missile, never seen before, can carry large nuclear warhead. USA prepared to go to war. So, yeah, what you said earlier was very interesting. Now, I did hear a conversation with Lou Dobbs earlier and Ollie North, and they were both saying that Kim has been given the time to do this, along with Iran, really from Clinton through Bush through Obama. So you're looking at three presidents with two terms each that have given Kim and those before him and Iran a chance and ability to build what they've built.
Well, it sounds like Psalm 2, and I would remind everybody to go to Psalm 2 and read it or study it. Don't read it, just study it, because Psalm 2 is the basis and the foundation of all latter-day prophecy. And this whole thing is a war against Jesus Christ, God the Father, and the Holy Ghost. That's the ultimate role of all of this. So everything you're watching, everything you're seeing is ultimately to get rid of the Holy Trinity and bring in their new world order with Apollo at the throne. Anyway, I got an interesting article here, Larry. I want your comments on it. It comes from World News. It's a lot worse than anyone thought. North Koreans have missiles to reach all of the United States of America. And remember, we talked about that. We don't have a clue as to what he's actually got. We don't know what he's got. And this missile that he does have appears to be connected closely to China, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And matter of fact, listening to Lou Dobbs and Ollie North talking, they were chiming in on he's got weaponry we're not aware of, and it also includes an arsenal of chemical weapons, according to Ollie North, that we're not even talking about. And, the information is really dire that they could literally turn Tokyo or Seoul into toast, just within just a short period of time. And of course, China and Russia are chiming in right now on North Korea's side. But it does appear, and some of the rhetoric today on Fox indicated that war is certainly on the table now. It's not just an option; it's on the table, and that's what we're looking at.
Well, this article is very interesting. It says, early on July 4, North Korea test-launched a missile from their leader, Kim Jong-un, called a present for the American bastards. All mass media dutifully reported the launch, but they all omitted a key element in their reportage. Tuesday's morning missile test reached a height of 1,741 miles, the highest altitude a North Korean missile has ever reached. It also crossed a classified threshold for the ability to strike globally, Worse, North Korea says their technology for atmospheric re-entry of a warhead has now been verified. Now this guy, I think his name is Harold Turner, that actually wrote this. He said, I worked for the FBI with my final 5 years from 2003-2008 with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Federal court transcripts proved that Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Amy Pickett, who was the third highest ranking member of the FBI in New York City, testified under oath that I handled national security, terrorism, and foreign counterintelligence. I have many former colleagues in the FBI and other alphabet agencies who reveal important information to me. It was my work in foreign counterintelligence that allowed me to have in the know on many matters of an international scope. I worked very closely with clandestine services and forged many trusted friendships with very brave people. Through those contacts, I can now confirm North Korea has the ability to launch a missile which can deliver a warhead anywhere in the entire United States. That doesn't sound too good, does it?
No, it doesn't, and it's already been proven. And as I shared in one of our previous programs, there were reports that China was providing some of the missiles and technology and equipment for these not only these tests but these firings of the missiles. And so you've got North Korea and China working directly together. And as a matter of fact, for the first time, Stuart, time on Fox this evening on Lou Dobbs, I heard rhetoric that said that are we prepared now to go to war with North Korea and China? So this is ramping up rather quickly.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It says, my former colleagues in the FBI and other agencies have confirmed directly to me the United States is now in actual danger of a North Korean missile strike. There is no doubt anymore. Perhaps that's why President Trump interrupted his Independence Day celebration to contact the United Nations Secretary General and invoke an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. He did that on Tuesday afternoon. And moreover, the Secretary General of the UN issued a very strong statement after Trump contacted him. He said this action constituted a dangerous escalation of the situation. Think about that statement for a moment. If this is simply a missile test, why would the top guy in the UN publicly describe it as a dangerous escalation? It's because it is. And get this, both China and Russia have publicly slammed North Korea over the test. But that doesn't mean anything, I don't think, personally myself. The U.S. requested a closed-door meeting of the United Nations Security Council on its latest launch. So he says here, the fact that the U.S. has asked for a closed-door meeting is a signal. We are going to lay out the technical data so as to prove to the United Nations that North Korea now poses a threat not only to the United States but to every other nation on earth. Moreover, in this closed-door meeting, the U.S. will announce our intention to mount a military attack. Have you heard anything about what came out of this meeting today?
I did. I heard that Europe and, most all the other countries of the world were strangely quiet to our announcement. And now we don't know what was said in secret, but China and Russia's rhetoric that was completely a political rhetoric at the UN backing North Korea. I have a feeling that this meeting at the G20 in Germany, that especially the side meetings with Putin, are going to be very direct from Trump, and probably the last warning, I would expect. This thing is, there's a number of generals that have said the last couple of days that the match is already struck, that we're right on the verge of a nuclear war right there. And, with Kim having 3 presidents in 2 terms each, give North Korea everything they wanted continually, and sanctions meant nothing. I don't think Kim's got the smarts to back down. He doesn't think he has to.
Well, if they have allowed this to go on, it almost sounds like the Armageddon script. You allow these rogue nations to come up so that you can ignite it whenever you want. Psalm 2, where we are watching a worldwide script being played out upon the masses of the world with but one goal, a new world order and the seating of Apollo. So here's what he says. Whether that war ends up involving Russia and or China is really not known. But if the Chinese and Russians get involved, then the 3 superpowers of this planet will be at war, and that will not leave us unaffected here in the United States. We would be hit here in America and hit badly. So then he says, I hope you have your emergency food, water, and fuel stashed away. So anyway, it does appear that we're getting closer. And as I said in the very beginning of all this, I have wondered if this is not a trap deliberately set to get Trump to go in there and cause some chaos over there with, we can't invade the Korean Peninsula. We have, 34,000 American troops there on the DMZ. Kim could wipe those out in 6 minutes. So we would lose a tremendous amount of people, millions in Seoul, and then the war is on. But we can't really invade the Korean Peninsula if, after this chaos with Russia on the border and Chinese troops by the tens of thousands also on the border of Korea, North Korea, what's to stop them from moving in and taking over? I was reading a very innocent article by a financial person, and he was saying that North Korea has between, I think it's like $6 and $10 trillion worth of minerals. It's a very mineral-rich nation. Why would China want to keep buying from them if they could move in and take it and then consolidate into one the Korean Peninsula? I'm just curious about it because a lot of the wars are fought over energy, as we are finding out, as Stan Deo pointed out in one of our recent interviews with him, that over there in the Middle East, it's really a war about energy. What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right. This is all about energy. It's what you've called the energy wars that have been going for some time. And what's intriguing to me, Stuart, is the fact that the New World Order, or the rich men, basically have spent the last 6 terms of U.S. presidents to produce what we have now in a Iranian regime and a North Korean regime who are bound together at the hip in the nuclear technology and the research and the development of those things. And I'm beginning to wonder if, like you've said, that all of this has been invested in the first domino, which could be North Korea, and who better to topple the first domino that leads into the Armageddon script than Trump?
Exactly. And the American people, particularly the far left, they'll blame anything on Trump. If he opens his mouth, they blame him on sucking in too much oxygen. The poor guy can't even breathe without being trounced on. But you have to look at this, I believe, from Psalm 2's viewpoint. You have to almost get on the moon and look at the earth and see what's really going on And it appears as though the nations are maneuvering for this conflict so that they literally can bring in their New World Order and to do the tribulation period first 3.5 years. And it's just looking worse and worse every day. You talked about Israel. What's going on over there in the Middle East with Israel?
Well, as you know, I mentioned, of course, the aircraft carrier and group that's in the Mediterranean is parked off of Haifa, Israel, right now, the port city. And it's it's strange for them to be parked there. And what we're hearing, though, in the background is two scenarios that are building at the moment. Number one scenario, it appears that some critical damage has been done to ISIS already by the U.S. and U.S.-backed individuals, the Kurds especially at Raqqa and Russia, and the attacks they've done. And it appears that Syria is in a situation of a partial partitioning that is about to take place, not particularly in some great meeting, but in a quick seizure of land. And there are reports of a concern of an invasion by Iran and Turkey into portions of Syria to take the land. And at the same time, of course, U.S. and the Russians are already there. Assad's got his little area, and this seems to be in play at the moment. Now, what's interesting, too, is, and the reason that Debka File's reporting that the carrier is there is because there are reports that when Turkey and Iran begin to invade Syria, they will also try to take part of Iraq, part of Jordan, and part of Israel. And so you're looking at a big war there. I mean, North Korea could start the domino tip, but North Korea could also tip over some of the Middle East. And those scenarios are in play. Now, at the same time, Iran has reportedly, and Netanyahu addressed this the last few days and warned Iran that he knows that Iran is pushing Hamas and Hezbollah into more missile attacks against Israel and attacks directly upon Israel. And so we've got that scenario. All of this seems to go back to what has happened over the last, I guess you could say 3 administrations or more that has really put North Korea and Iran, both regimes, into the ability to cause big wars. I mean, they definitely have the ability, and, this is all, I think I remember you talk about a New World Order playbook.
Yes.
I think they've been going by it and providing even the abilities for these nation states, so to speak, to strike the matches and start the wars. But it doesn't appear that North Korea is going to back down. And China, according to Trump, has already failed to stop them at all. Matter of fact, China has increased trade with North Korea since all of this started. And we're at a critical issue. And I do like the way that guy ended his report that you read, telling people, you better be prepared, folks, because, we could wake up one day and everything's changed.
Yes. And I think that's, it comes suddenly, like everything else. And Trump is not, he already said, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, or when I'm going to do it. But he has more or less laid down the gauntlet for North Korea. He hasn't really called it a red line, but it sure sounds like a red line. And again, I think all of this, like this American summer that we may be looking at, and the communist coup attempt here against Trump, may all be just scripted for the masses. It's kind of like going to a movie, and they can make it very, very real. So, folks, you want to get ready. The rhetoric is really climbing rapidly, and hopefully he'll put it off. But like you said, Larry, I wonder why he's visiting and what's going to actually be talked about with Putin. These guys all know each other, really. They're all world leaders. And we read that article on our last program about how they're getting together with Soros in a big party. So they present one face to the world, but then there's a different face when they all get together. And it reminds me of Psalm 2. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say to what you were saying, what's interesting is the fact that, we know everybody's history somewhat, and like you said, it appears this is all Masonic energy wars, basically. However, Lou Dobbs said something good today on his show, and I always like to watch his show because he's a very good commentator, and he really tells it like it is. And he's on Fox Business Channel, by the way. He said today, why am I to believe everything that we're hearing about what all these other countries are being told by America right now? He said, because I don't even know that America is under control right now. He said, look at our own country. Who's in control? He said, I don't even know who's in control of America. So you want me to think that we're controlling other countries?
Yeah, no, this is all, America is controlled by the deep state. Deep state is controlled by the Illuminati, and the Illuminati is controlled by Satan. And people just don't realize that Satan is actually real. Or if he isn't, Jesus Christ was a total lunatic, probably high on mushrooms or something, because he indicated and dealt with Satan directly, person to person. The Christians today, I think, really don't even realize Satan exists. And he's running the whole world. He is the prince and the power of the air. The Bible clearly says that. He's the prince and power of the spirit of man who is fallen, and and God's right behind him, letting this whole thing go down the tubes for Christ rejection, apostasy, etc., etc. So anyway, not good news. I want to read a little short email, Larry, and see what your take is on this. This came in as, I think, a comment. My father passed away this year. He was a Mason. He still gets a Freemason magazine. The last one did info on how lodges, these are Masonic lodges, started around the world after 1717, interesting numbers. What stood out was a Mason lodge that started in Antarctica way back in 1935 at the South Pole. They don't see anything about it, but weird things are happening in that area. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, I think that's amazing. I had no idea of that. But, we know we've had stations in Antarctica. And a matter of fact, apparently there's a treaty there, too, involved that says you're not supposed to militarize Antarctica. And everybody's got a portion, Russia and the UK and us and, all of this. And what's interesting, Stuart, is that we've known a lot's been going down in Antarctica for some time, but now it's beginning to leak out. And it appears, in most recent few years that they have begun to send military down there. So
yes,
something is going on, and that tie-in is incredible.
Yeah, it's a military. In fact, it's military has all but seized control of a good share of it. And most of it's off limits. Even the pilots that fly in and out of there are told where they can go, what they can't see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there really is something going on in that area. You talked about that Bible code that was run by Barry Rothman on Otto Warmbier, or however he pronounces his name. There was a fellow on YouTube. I just want to touch on this. I should have put it up for more time. We can do that maybe Friday. But what he claimed was that this incident in North Korea was what he calls a false flag. Now, a lot of people misunderstand what a false flag is. A false flag does not mean that people don't die in these things. A false flag simply means that it was engineered by the Illuminati, by whoever, to bring about a certain result, always leading to more control over the people, less freedom, and ultimately the new world order. And I think that's what we're coming up against. A war, a great war, and out of the ashes of that arises the new world order, the rise of the phoenix, as Noahs would say. So it's very, very interesting that when this guy does all these numbers on that event, they all point to 923. And I found that fascinating. Wow. So that star sign means an awful lot, folks, and we're coming up on it awful fast. And so I guess I would say batten down the hatches and make your final preparations. You may be riding through an awful period of time where there's not any cash. If you don't have it, the banks will be closed, and a lot of things can happen real quick. Anything else you got, Larry, before we shut down here?
Well, I was just going to mention that Otto Warmbier Torah code that Barry Rothman ran. It included Korean blood. Now he was not Korean, so I would say the Torah code validates the situation, whether it was a false flag or not. It doesn't say, other than it says lie. And he died, so it included his death. Now, what I find telling, Stuart, is the fact that the Haley at the UN today in her address, and also Trump had mentioned in not only the missile test, the nuclear situation, but they also mentioned Otto in the damning of North Korea and Kim. And I find that rather telling because it could possibly lead into. And by the way, I didn't know there was over 10 million people living in Seoul, and no telling how many others. So a terrible war there would take millions of lives, and they would consider that not only a massacre of life, but a sacrifice.
Yeah, this 923 thing is a pivot point. 923. 924 in and along that area, and as we reported, I'll get into it more deeply Friday, but it is I'm convinced that in and around those dates we are going to have an arrival, and that arrival is going to fool everybody. And talking about the paranormal, I wish I could get into it, but we don't really have time. But the paranormal events around the world are increasing rapidly. In fact, I was just watching or reading a thing about a Mothman that they're seeing in Chicago. All kinds of weird stuff is happening all around the world. And the paranormal, the veil is thinning. And I'm going to try and get a lady on who's had a lot of that paranormal experience. And maybe we can put together kind of a round table on it. What do you got, Larry, to close down with?
Oh, I would just tell people, keep your eyes on North Korea and that region, and also the Middle East right now. And don't forget to watch America, too, because the Game of Thrones in Washington, D.C. is 24/7.
It appears they're gearing up on this coup. They're trying to get rid of him through the 25th Amendment to replace a president. And they want, I guess, former presidents to make a decision about that. Plus, they want to impeach him for all kinds of reasons. And really all it is a communist coup, folks. That's what we're watching, this communist takeover of the United States. They're following their playbook to the letter. What say, Larry? What do you think?
Well, I think you're exactly right, and I wish a lot more people could really see the truth and would speak out, but they don't. They're too quiet. The American people haven't got off the couch yet.
Yeah, I remember that when I was on Art Bell. They're too lazy to get off the couch even to change a channel they don't even like. Anyway, good night, folks, and thanks for listening. We'll see you Friday night. Night.